Welcome to Leadership Talk, the official Waymaker podcast, the place for conversations about leadership, strategy, and technology that help make business improvement business as usual. Welcome to Leadership Talk, the official Waymaker podcast. I'm your host, Craig, and with me, as always, is Stuart Leo, CEO and founder of Waymaker. How are you, Stu?
I'm great today, Craig. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
Stu,
I'm excited about our content. That's what I'm excited about.
Well, I kind of threw you in the deep end and threw another episode on you on this whole idea of mindsets, because I think we've been talking about that in terms of the lattice of our thinking and the framework. And now that we've got a good handle on our 5 responsibilities of a leader in terms of establishing those mindsets, I actually wanted
which are, by the way, which are? They are, just to help a brother out there, think, plan, inspire, equip, and empower.
Now, I know
5 responsibilities of every leader.
I know this because I transcribed that whole thing, but in the moment you threw me.
It's just getting you back.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, go on.
Okay,
Keep going.
well,
you had a beautiful intro.
Okay, I wanted to follow up with a conversation on how we actually might lead others, because we talked about leading ourselves, and then I'm like, hey, let's talk about how we might lead others now with all this newfound wisdom that we have. Got any thoughts on that, Stu?
Thank you for asking. It just so happens we have a resource on this. No, get out of town. We do, and it's called the 5 postures of leadership. And the big idea on the 5 postures of leadership is quite simply that better leaders make business improvement business as usual. Did you like that? Better leaders make business improvement business as usual. The idea here is that so many leadership resources talk about how you've got to be this leader or that leader, or what kind of leader are you? Well, the reality is, as we grow and mature, we become different types of leaders, hopefully. And certain postures of leadership are more effective at certain stages in the growth cycle of the organisation.
Can you say that again? Just the last bit.
Okay, so I don't know what I said. I think I said this.
It was so profound.
When somebody says, just say that again, you're like, I don't know what I said. I'll paraphrase what I said. Yep. Based on the stages we are going through as an organisation, requires us to have a different posture of leadership. We cannot be a static leader. We cannot just find one kind of leadership or one leadership style or one dimension to our leadership and then assume that will work in all situations. It just won't. Great leaders have actually built a dynamic state to their leadership where they can apply a certain posture to their leadership. And so this is quite different from most other resources that you'll read on leadership, which are great and fantastic and highly encourage you reading them. This is where we want to bring another dimension, to excuse the pun, to our leadership thinking. So when we think about the Waymaker leadership curve, we move from the very base of the curve in ideation, where we have an idea. That idea could be triggered because we've had a problem, or we see a problem, or something happens to us, or we just have a great idea. And we need to move from ideation to market fit or identity. So what role do we have to play in this marketplace? Which is all about saying, is there a role for me to play in this marketplace? Or is there a role for us to play as a business? Is this problem real? Yeah. We've had this idea, but how do we fit? And so we've got to find market fit. There's a very elusive answer to that in startup world, and there's not always an easy answer to have you found market fit. Some commentators will say you'll know it when you suddenly have more money in your bank account and not enough time to hire the people to serve the customers. That's not a bad example of market fit. Suddenly the business just blows up. Others will say you'll just know it when it happens because the business is going amazingly and you don't know what happened. You've found that fit. Yep. I think there's a greater definition that we could start to apply, and I think it's when we find the clarity in the core foundations of the first 6 of the 7 questions, when we've found clarity in purpose that leads to vision. And it's a purpose that aligns with the marketplace. So we solve a real problem. I think it's when we find clarity in the perceptions we need to bring and the value we need to bring, and the market says, yes, that's what you need to be thought of is what we think of you. There's a fit. I think there's a fit when we position in the right place and the customer says, yes, I want that aspirational thing from you. I think there's a fit when our value proposition matches the value that's being sought, when we get our business model right. I think there's a fit in our customer experience when the personality we hold across the customer journey as we acquire and retain and grow customers is the kind of experience and personality that customers want to experience by and large. And I think the same applies in employee experience when there's a fit where talent says, yeah, that kind of experience I want, and therefore we have people wanting to work for us. And so when we get purpose, perceptions, positioning, value proposition, personality, and the practices and the principles of our culture right, then we will find a fit. And I think that's a better fit than just getting cash in the bank. Although I'll take the cash in the bank, but if you get the cash in the bank and you don't have those other things, you tend to blow the cash in the bank up. So we find fit and we then move on.
Oh, have you heard that saying that if you ever become a millionaire, you better figure out how to do it. Otherwise, you're not going to have the money anymore, right? Someone gives you $1 million. You better figure out how to be a millionaire or you're going to lose all the money, right? So it's more than just – so there is a science element to it, right, which you've just kind of talked about. Is there an X factor?
Yes. Yeah, of course. There's a little bit of magic. There's a little bit of luck. There's a little bit of right place, right time. All of those things need to come into play. Finding market fit is so hard, but there's an element of science and there's an element of art. And I don't think you could find an individual on the earth that would stake their life on drawing the fine line between where the science stops and the art starts. If you are that person, then
we'd love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, but please visit waymaker.io, send us a message and we'll get you on our podcast. Even people that, Y Combinator leaders and others, some of the famous startups in the world, are fairly loose on their definition simply because it's hard to define. The point is, there's a moment.
Yeah, okay.
That's the point.
So, Stu,
from that, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Stu, the big idea here is that we change our leadership posture based on the growth stage of our business.
Correct. Yes, I only got through 2 of the 6 stages. So, so the next stage is calibration when we're building team skills and systems. The stage after that is maturity when we're getting consistent returns. The stage after that is really a mastery, a market leadership stage when we're positioned 1 or 2 in our marketplace.
Yeah.
And we've really revolutionized what we're doing. And somewhere between maturity and market leadership, we should have initiated the next thing, next product, next service, next business unit, next country, next whatever, next idea, which will throw us all the way back to the start of the curve again.
Right.
And that's the point. So
it's not a progress of leadership to a level of maturity. It's you literally recalibrate as you identify where your organization is.
Yeah, so when we talk about the 5 postures of leadership, we're talking about what posture of leadership is required at what stage of the leadership curve, the growth curve.
Okay.
And that's important because if you put Winston Churchill in a startup, you might blow the startup up. But if you put Winston Churchill in front of a country to win a war, you might do extremely well. In fact, Winston Churchill's a great example. He was always accused of being a warmonger. He wanted, careful what I say here, but he wanted to keep World War II going after he'd conquered Hitler and go and knock out the Russians. Why, I'm not sure. He was accused of being a warmonger. He stayed as Prime Minister for a little bit. He tried to win back. He was a great wartime leader, but he was not a great peacetime leader. That was really evident. So his posture of leadership was really effective when the chips were down and you had to win, but his posture of leadership didn't adapt back into peacetime very well.
So are you saying that most leaders will only exhibit one or two of these postures, or great leaders will exhibit all five?
I think all great leaders will exhibit all five, so that list gets very, very short very, very quickly. But what I am saying is that as we lead our teams and our organisations, we don't have to be Winston Churchill. We don't have to fight world wars, hopefully, and we can step back and think about the posture of leadership we need to take according to the stage. And that's really important, because your capacity to lead under the right posture will determine the ceiling you place on your organisation.
Yeah, great. Okay.
If you cannot break into those new postures of leadership, demonstrating new skills and abilities and beliefs and mindsets, then you cannot lift the organisation beyond where it needs to be. And if you can't do that, then you've put a ceiling on the organisation, which is why better leaders make business improvement business as usual.
Stu, let's talk about the different postures based on the growth stage of the organisation. If I throw out a growth stage, you can tell me what type of posture I need as a leader in that space. Yes?
Oh, this is a fun game.
This is great. All right. So when we're at the ideation stage of, we're at the very startup.
You've been boring. You've started at the start.
I have.
But that's actually a good place to start.
I have. Yes. So what type of leader do I need to be in that space?
We have called that posture the curious leader.
Okay.
And the curious leader has one job, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That is to lead yourself in order to discover the problem to solve.
Yep.
So if you cannot find the valuable problem to solve and effectively lead yourself through the self-discipline of finding that problem to solve, you cannot break through into the next posture of leadership. That's it in a nutshell.
Great.
I could go into so much more detail, but I won't, because I think we want to park some of this for some upcoming episodes. Is that right, Mr.
Yes,
Producer?
that is right. We'll tackle this one next week. But so the curious leader. So at the ideation stage of your business growth, we want to be a curious leader. Okay.
We want to be a curious leader, and that posture of curiosity, armed with leading yourself to develop the self-discipline to define, refine that problem. We call it the curious leader because you must have a very curious mind. You must have a scientific mind at this stage. When we think of great scientists that have maybe invented vaccines, people like Professor Ian Fraser here in Australia, they have a curious mind. They see something. They go, why is that happening? They hypothesize. They test, they measure, they repeat. And that's actually a real discipline. And you must have a self-discipline to be able to do that. I'm a really good ideator and a really bad scientist, if I'm really honest. Because the science part of the ideation is actually really hard. Can I throw out something from our years gone by?
Go.
So back in the day when you were a rock star and I was a wannabe, we used to get together with ourselves and maybe a few mates and a good mate of ours. We'd get in your studio and we'd bang out some songs.
Yes.
Have some fun. You may not want to admit to that with me, but that's okay. And every now and then, you'd come in and go, okay, boys, what have you got? You, me, and Brett or somebody else would be in this room. And I've got this little riff, or, we were young and having fun. It's what you did 20 years ago. And we'd play it, And as Mr. Producer, you had this famous line that carried into many of our business dealings over life. And what was your line?
What else you got? Is that right? Is that the one you were referring to?
That's the one I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And the first time you'd hear Craig Hyman, what else you got? It was like, what just happened? I spent hours coming up with
best work.
That's my best work.
Yeah.
But actually, the art of saying, what else have you got, was the art of scientific improvement. Going, yeah, that's good, but I know there's more in you.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Yeah, fast forward 8 years later and you were saying the same thing to me.
Correct, yeah. Just to get you back, that's all. The stuff I was getting was great. But it's this curious mind that wants to explore, but it also has the self-discipline to refine the exploring.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big idea. What else have you got? Doesn't always mean throw out what you've got. Is, okay, let's go deeper in that. I like that first part, but the next bit's not working.
Yep.
So what else you got? Let's work on this. Let's shape this. Let's refine this until we unlock the thing that's sitting here. And in business, when we have an idea, sometimes we see a really distinct problem and we're like, that problem needs solving. But if it's really obvious, it's often because it's so big and so obvious and many people are trying to solve it. You want to actually kind of find the problem within the problem. And so you want to keep working on the problem. So writing problem statements and, gosh, I'm getting into so much detail.
Let's move on. Talk about it next.
But I think you get the big idea of the curious leader. Curious leader, persistence and self-discipline of leading yourself.
All right. If you can come up with a life analogy for the next 4, that'd be great. Okay. Growth stage 2. Growth stage 2 is about finding market fit, which we didn't do as young songwriters.
As young songwriters, we didn't find market fit,
and therefore we didn't possess the posture of the of the leader in this space, which is what, Stu?
The persistent leader. I was going to say maybe you did.
I probably did. Yeah.
The finding market fit is really hard. Let's stay with the analogy of young musicians, of which I'm not. The Bono wannabe. The persistent leader says, I've got to be prepared to eat baked beans. There's a reason why artists are poor, because they're persistent in their art. And I think the big idea in this posture, the posture of the persistent leader, is actually, you've got to not just lead yourself, but by this stage you've found a problem. You might have 1 or 2 or 3 around you working on this problem. If you allow anybody to give up, you've given up. You're gone. There's got to be an unbreakable bond in the commitment to finding market fit, to breaking through, and hence why the most important thing to be able to do in this stage of growth, the market fit stage, is the beginning to lead others, because this is where you're going to start to learn to lead others. But the most important thing in leading others is not giving up, being persistent. At all costs, we're going to make this work.
Yeah,
and that's sometimes in life there are things that you lead that don't require that persistence. Sometimes there are things you lead that do, and maybe a couple of boys in their skinny jeans and tight tank shirt tops don't need to become rock stars. So the persistence isn't there. But there are other things we work at and we lead. And if you've found a problem and it's really valuable and you've unlocked that problem, then you will move into a stage where the most valuable thing you'll have is persistence. And so we'll come to talk about that in coming episodes. This is where you learn the art of resilience. This is when you learn to lead others with very limited resources. This is the foundation of leading others, because you don't have what you need. You don't know where you're going very well. It's damn hard to get things done. Your backs are against the wall. Nobody wants to invest in you. people are like, "You're crazy. What are you doing? Everything about this just doesn't smell right." But you've got this thing inside of you that you know if you keep working on is going to get there. So the persistent leader.
I like the phrase that I heard once around this, which is inspiration is your greatest currency. Because you actually can't afford to pay people what they're worth.
That's true. Yeah. At this stage, it's I need this, and I know it's worth X, but I'm only prepared to pay you maybe A. Please.
But look at the horizon; it's beautiful.
Look at where we're going to go. Imagine if you had worked with Elon Musk 35 years ago. Imagine what you could be doing now. And so you've got to really learn the art of spending inspiration.
Growth stage 3, Stu, is calibration, or our ability to grow teams, skills, and systems. What type of posture do I need in this space?
Yeah, this is there's only one title for this. This is the posture of the empowering leader. No rocket science here, because this is when you must be stepping back. You must be empowering. You're now not just leading others, but you're actually beginning to lead leaders. You've actually got to put other leaders in place. So an empowering leader has to empower others, has to equip, you have to be replacing yourself. And so the empowering leader must be building leaders. And if you're not building leaders, you're not empowering. And if you're not empowering, you're not able to expand out the things that you've developed, the problem you've solved, the fit that you've found, the culture that you've developed, the systems and skills that you've developed in a raw state. You've now got to translate that out. So many small to medium enterprises fail when they're in that 3 to 8 kind of range.
Yeah.
Because so much of what they do is innate. It's cultural. This is where Porter, his famous statement of culture eats strategy for breakfast, is so powerful. You haven't documented, you haven't systemized, you haven't created training processes to repeat skill development. So you hire somebody and you're actually hiring them for their skills and their abilities and what they've done in their past. You're not hiring them for their malleability and their leadership capacity and their ability to learn your skills and systems and grow up within those. And that's a massive difference. If you're a business leader or owner, organizational leader or owner that's just heard that statement, you'll go, how many times have you done that? Look at your last 10 hires. You've probably hired them for what's on their resume, not for what that you have determined they're capable of being able to do. So the best hires are the ones you hire and you can train in your skills and systems. Now, of course, they need to demonstrate in their past experience. But if you're only buying people for what they've done in the past, then you're not buying people. That's a terrible statement. You're not hiring and bringing people in for what they can do for you into the future. So that is the empowering leader.
For those watching on YouTube, or my lights just went out. So
did the power just go out in Adelaide?
Yep, that's fine. And everything else is still going, so we're good. Stu,
it's all right. It's flooding in Queensland. You've probably seen it on CNN. Half the state's underwater.
Yeah, that's true. Stu, growth stage 4, maturity, which is where we start to expand the organization.
Yeah, so I should say, these postures, they're not equal. It's not like you do time in each one that's equal.
Right.
You don't get a year in one and a year in another and a year in another. Depending on your capacity to lead, you may accelerate your way through different stages. However, if you make it through ideation and you make it through market fit, it's more than likely you'll stay in empowering for the meat and potatoes of your organisation until you can break through. This is where a lot of organisations get into calibration and where they're building skills, teams, and systems, and they never really find the capacity punch up into maturity. For a small business, that's often when you've achieved consistent returns and you're able to start stepping back, which means you've got to have been able to work on the business, not in the business.
Does maturity mean lots of stuff?
No, not at all. Maturity just means you're at a stage where you're getting consistent returns for the activities you invest in, which is why we've called this posture the wise leader.
Right.
Because wisdom is the application of the knowledge of truth. And you have found the problem you have solved. You have developed the truth, the objectives, truth statements around the problems you're solving, the customers you're serving, the culture you're developing. There's clarity. And therefore you've developed wisdom off that clarity and alignment. So the mature leader is the wise leader. That's the posture, the wisdom. You will hold a lot of wisdom, and which is why at the mature stage, it's that wisdom picture, not the hustle picture, the wisdom picture. This is the stage where you'll know you're at this stage when, as you hire new hires, you've got multiple people in the organisation. You can go spend time with that person because they've been with us for 5 or 10 years. They just know it. Get to know. There's wisdom there. So the wise leader has achieved a state where their organisation gets consistent returns for the activities they do. What does that mean? It means if you take an ad campaign to market, you know within a range what it's going to do. If you hire 5 team members, you know at least 4 of them are going to be with you in 2 years' time. You know if you launch a new product, you know how that launch is going to go, and you know that you're going to achieve certain outcomes because of the wisdom that's in place from product testing through to release programs, underlying demand, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Wise organisations can rinse and repeat these processes consistently. This is what investors love. This is what venture capitalists love. At this point, they've taken a 20x return on the money they've put in at market fit, and they're getting ready for a public listing or an IPO, because this is at the point where you can go to the market and you can say, see, look, what we've done for the last 3 years, it's consistent. We're mature. Trust us. Give us your money to buy a share. And when you pop that onto the marketplace, which is why if you don't do in the first 1 or 2 or 3 quarters what you say you're going to do in an IPO, you will get punished because the promise has been broken. You're not wise. You're not mature. And therefore, you're not at that stage. Making sense?
Let me test a hypothesis with you. You know that saying, wisdom is knowledge applied?
Yes.
I have an idea that it's actually wisdom is knowledge applied correctly. Because it's actually not. Yeah. What do you think? Discuss. Like it's actually...
Yeah. I think that is a brilliant extension. Whoever said that saying just got the Craig Hyman.
What else have you got? That's right.
What else you got? Good. I think that what else you need is correctly. Yeah, that's right. It's not quite there. So say that again for the tape.
Wisdom
for the tape. How old am I?
and when we copy this onto VHS, wisdom is knowledge applied correctly.
Yeah. And so how do we know it's correct? Because it lives in an LMS in our organisation. There's a standard operating procedure. There's a way of holding people accountable to the correct way of doing things.
Yeah, and it's also based on historical evidence, right?
Yes, yeah. There's accountability. The Waymaker mantra is show the way, build the system, train the leader, hold them accountable, help them win. If we are doing that repeatedly, we are building maturity into our organisation. We build the evidence of results, and over time we've built maturity. So the wise leader, the posture of the wise leader, and the wise leader has taken the empowering leader from leading leaders to leading leaders of leaders.
Yeah, great. So the last growth stage is mastery, Stu.
Market leadership. Yep. So at this stage, and you referenced this before, but at this stage, the posture is the inspirational leader. Because at this stage, you've actually achieved something that's inspirational. You've solved a problem. You've found market fit. You've scaled up team skills systems. You've done that repeatably and consistently with great returns. You might have IPO'd or got your money out. You've stepped back. You've now got leaders leading leaders. You're now the Apple Steve Jobs. You're the GE Jack Welch. You're the Virgin Richard Branson. You're the whoever.
Amazon Jeff Bezos. Right. Keep going.
Amazon Jeff Bezos. Okay, all right. Who, by the way, only last year before? Only in the last 12 to 18 months did he achieve this status where he actually stepped back. And I think he's chairman, but he's no longer CEO. He's handed that over. He's fired himself from every single job he's ever held inside that organisation. He's been fired more times than anybody in that organisation. That's how you become inspirational. And so the inspirational leader is now leading industries, markets, or people groups. So when we want to understand what the world of e-commerce is doing, if Jeff Bezos says something, we listen.
Yeah.
If we want to understand financial markets, we listen to Warren Buffett. If we want to understand geopolitical leaders, we listen to past inspirational presidents and prime ministers. And I won't name names for fear
political reasons.
Political reasons. Pick your own. But these aren't news anchors. These aren't Instagram followers, people. These are people who have achieved transformational work inside marketplaces and communities. So they've transformed the way people live their lives or work. And that's inspirational. They are true inspirational leaders, and they've not only taken an organisation or a country or a situation or an issue to maturity, they've done it to the point where they're now leading that market, that industry or that people group or that issue, and therefore they have influence and control over that. And that's inspirational. And their job's not done. They may have stepped back from many things, but their job's not done. Their job is to ensure that those coming behind them have the inspiration, the currency to spend on the next crop of problems.
Yeah. You've actually got leaders that are inspirational leaders that part of their MO is to go back to that ideation stage and just repeat, like an Elon Musk, for example, that succeeds in one thing and then, okay, well, let's ideate another idea and boom.
Yes. Yeah. And would I say Elon Musk is in the inspirational leader? Yeah, you'd have to say he's now in the inspirational leadership category. But he probably only got there in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I think he was just a crazy guy with a lot of money for a long time. And a lot of people were like, what the heck are you doing? And, there are a few people that cottoned onto his vision and his capacity, and he pulled it off. He did it. He got SpaceX to the moon and back and put a rocket back down on Earth without blowing it up, which is something NASA couldn't do. He's invented an electric car that can pretty much drive itself and transformed the way people are buying and driving cars.
And a global payment system.
And a global payment. Let's not forget PayPal. Those and his work, although some of it's, scary and adventurous and dangerous, his work in AI is certainly going to be transformative. What kind of transformation on society, we don't know yet. But yeah, you would put him there. So when we think about those kinds of leaders, and we think about people like that, and he is one of those characters that now is being held in different esteem. He's being asked about geopolitical stuff outside his realm because he's inspirational within his realm.
Yeah.
And
yeah, okay. All right.
I should stop
Let's
there.
stop there. All right. So, Stu, we've got 5 postures of a leader.
Yeah. Let's sum up.
The curious leader, the persistent leader, the empowering leader, the wise leader, and the inspirational leader. And we're actually going to do an episode on each of those and sort of deep dive into.
Deep dive.
Would be a good use of our time, I think.
It would. And the big idea here is that great leaders know how to posture according to the stage. If you put an inspirational leader in at the ideation stage, if they don't get back to the curious leader, if Elon couldn't get back to ideation, what makes it, oh gosh, we've gone there with Elon. Sorry, you summed up and I've gone back into content. But what makes Elon great is he can get back into becoming the curious leader again. He doesn't have to be treated like President Obama, say, an ex-president. He can get back in the weeds and start something again. And that's really powerful. So our capacity to lead is our capacity to posture for the right kind of leadership at the right kind of growth stage in order to break through the ceilings that we place as leaders on our organisations.
All right. Next episode, we'll deep dive into Curious Leader. Until then, we want to have more conversations around how to make business improvement, business as usual.